Okay, this is a video on how to load headcount into PBCS for reporting and analysis. So like previous videos, I'm going to show you the steps and I'm going to show you what you need. So we're going to pull updated global headcount off of SharePoint. We're going to transform that data for PBCS loading. We're going to push into reporting. We're going to refresh the headcount report to check that it was loaded, and then we're going to push into planning at the end. So what we're going to need is we're going to go to the SharePoint site, finance, payroll, headcount report. The payroll team updates it every month, and then we are going to take that report and then put it on a transformation load file. And then we're also going to need the monthly headcount finance business partner report just to check and make sure that it's loaded, but also I provide a monthly update to FBP leadership on current headcount across the SLT hierarchy. So here we go. So I've created, and I will drag this over. So within this path, so we go share, financial reporting, monthly reporting. If you go 2019, sandbox, salaries, headcount, you'll find a variety of files. The one that I am going to be working off of is this global headcount by entity, July 2019. So I've opened that up. What you're going to do for August is save it as a new version for the new month. But what I'm going to do is just kind of go through an example of what I did for July. So I'm going to come over here, and this is the completed example. This is going to be new. So I'm going over here, and let's just start from the beginning. And we're going to go to the source. We are going to go to Teams Finance. And in that section, we're going to go to the payroll area, payroll salary planning. There's a headcount report section, and the payroll team updates a global headcount file every month. You'll see it at the top. And what I typically do is I download it and save, open. So that's going to give you a month by month total headcount. So you can either copy and paste this in, or you can just move this over. Okay. So from here, you can see the monthly balance or the monthly headcount of each of the teams. So from this, what we're going to do is we're going to create, I'm going to create a pivot table. And I'm going to put it here. And pivot table. So you'll see on the bottom I have a completed version, but so what we're going to need to do is have the team number and the July totals by team. And from here, we're also going to put on the columns the entity, and this is kind of how we're going to load it into PBCS. So you'll see there's all the entities. So for a variety of teams, there's multiple entities for one specific team. So what we're going to do here, this consolidates or aggregates everything by team and by entity. And so what we need to do is transform this, or transform the information so we can load it into PBCS. So we're going to do equals, and PBCS accepts it with the teams with a T in front and team number. And for entity, PBCS needs to have a C in front of it. And entity. So typically what I do is just do this across the top, do this across all the teams, and now it's ready for a PBCS load. So I usually have 2 additional tabs, one for reporting and one for planning. And what you'll see is every month, these are the dimensions, these are the specific members that I'm loading them into. So working version, no products. I believe this is this is territory. This has to be, can't remember what dimension that is. Let me just refresh and then I can tell. You also have to log into PBCS. And after you connect to the grid. Okay, so this is project. Yeah, okay, so working version, no project, no product, no value chain, corporate center, local currency. And then what we're gonna do is just make sure that we're loading to the correct entity, and then we're gonna make sure we load to the proper team. So what I typically do is from a previous month, I copy this, paste it in. I see, okay. All right, so what you'll see is that this way I can make sure that I'm loading it consistently to the right combination of dimensions and members. So what we're going to do next is we're going to need to copy so I'm going to ad hoc. All right, so now I'm connected to this grid. And what I need to do is make sure that I have the right entities. So I copy what I've transformed, paste. And then what I do is copy this, paste. And then I drag the head count. This is actually an account in the account dimension, but it's called headcount. And so I'm going to make sure that I'm not suppressing anything. Okay, and I'm going to refresh. All right, so now we have a grid. And if I hadn't already loaded it, you would see zeros here. And what I have done before, let's just say we're doing August. And then what I've done is just, this kind of gets, okay. Now I just load it to August. And refresh. So let's say we're doing it for August. So what you'll see is a bunch of zeros, all the teams, and we're ready to load. So the next step is go back to the pivot. Copy the grid or the pivot that we created. Let's close that. And we're just going to paste. So I pasted a link. So you'll see the pivot. I pasted a link. We're just loading into August for example purposes. But now it's ready to go. So the colors changed so you can tell that it's ready to load. So I'm going to submit. And there you go. So we have now loaded into the reporting cube an example for next month, so August headcount. So if we wanted to go, the next thing I would do is open up this headcount file. So you'll find that in the same area. So I haven't created a folder for the load file and then the report, but you'll see the July headcount here. And in order to change all of the members, right? So July, it's all connected to the front sheet. So I would do August, changes these. So we've already connected to the grid. This is a grid. So what I'm going to do next is just refresh. There you go. So now we are officially connected to this grid. All right. Now I'm going to go back. Month to date. And you'll see yep. I'm going to pause here for a second so I can check to make sure. Okay. So I am back. Now, what I've done, I think what's happened is looking at PBCS, this is the production, and I'm looking at the account dimension, and I'm looking at stat account. And this account, which is headcount down here, it's at a never share aggregation or data storage. But in test, which I was previously loading it was dynamic calc. And I have a feeling that that difference is causing issues when I'm connecting to this report in the production environment. So what I'm going to do is just show you how it was loaded when it was working properly in test. So right now I've connected to test, and you can see that over here. And this grid is now connected to the pivot, and I'm going to load into test just like I did for production. And I'm going to submit. And so after this, I'm going to connect. I'm going to connect to, hey, I'm going to connect to test for this headcount report as well. So I'm going to do planning, ad hoc, reuse sheet contents and point of view. And what's going to happen is I'm hoping that this information is going to be loaded. Boom. Yeah. So that's the problem. So this works in test. I think what's going to have to happen is someone's going to have to change the data storage for this back into dynamic calc when it's at never share in production. But for all intents and purposes, assuming that this was all correct, what we've done is, and I'll go back. We've gone back, so we've pulled headcount from payroll, we pivoted on it, we've transformed it, so we've added the C in front of entity or company, the T in front of teams, and what we've done is pushed it into the reporting cube, and we've checked it against the report 1284-1307. The pivot shows we must have a missing company. Ugh. $12.84. Okay. So this team is added in production, but not in test. And that's why it's not showing up in test. So that if you want to clone test and production, you have to add that one in. So that's why we're missing two teams when we look at this report, or two headcount, is because that specific team is missing from test, but it's in production. So you'll see if I make sure, okay, in Sue, so you can see those are zeros, but it's because in test they're not, that particular team isn't there. So problem solving. So anyways, we did the process right, just test and production need to be aligned. Let me go back to the slides here. So we pulled the headcount master. So I'll go back through the steps really quick. So we went to SharePoint, finance, payroll, headcount report, pulled this down. The next month we'll have another row or column with August. We pivoted on it, added the right labels to them, loaded in to reporting, checked, updated, checked. And the last step would be to create another grid identical to this, but without month to date. And that would be the planning cube. So it'll look like this. And literally what you would do is identical, but to load it into planning cube as well. And then you would know that planning and reporting are the same thing.